In the quiet reaches of the galaxy, where the stars blinked in their endless dance, Earth had become more than just a blue planet. Over the past few decades, humans had ventured into space with a curiosity that could not be contained. Their ships, sleek and powerful, roamed the void, charting the farthest corners of the universe. Yet for all their advancements, the universe had kept its secrets, silent and distant, like an ancient book with pages unread. Captain Leela Brooks stood at the observation deck of the Pioneer, one of humanity's most advanced exploration ships. Her dark hair, tied in a tight ponytail, fluttered slightly as the ship hummed steadily through space. She gazed at the distant stars, the expanse that had always intrigued her. It had been a year since their last discovery. There was a sense of anticipation growing within her. "Captain, we've picked up a strange signal," came a voice through the comm system. It was Lieutenant Nathaniel Carter, her second in command. His voice was calm, but laced with the urgency of someone who had seen something out of the ordinary. Lila turned, her attention fully focused. "What kind of signal?" she asked, her tone sharp with curiosity. "It's not like anything we've encountered before. The frequency is unlike any known to us. It's almost musical in nature," Nathaniel replied, his voice reflecting a mix of fascination and confusion. Lila's heart skipped a beat. A musical signal? In all her years of space exploration, she had never encountered something so peculiar. It was either an anomaly or the first sign of intelligent life beyond Earth. She quickly strode over to the control panel, her fingers flying across the holographic display. "Plot a course," Lila ordered. Her eyes now fixed on the location of the signal, the computer beeped in acknowledgement, and the Pioneer adjusted its trajectory toward the source. As the ship neared the coordinates, Lila's mind raced. What kind of civilization would send out a signal like this? Was it a message? A warning? Or perhaps a call to something far beyond their understanding? Hours passed, and the ship glided silently through the vast emptiness of space. Finally, they arrived at the source. What they saw next left them breathless. A massive, glowing object loomed ahead. It was not a planet, nor a ship, but something different, an ancient structure, suspended in space. It resembled a colossal tower with intricate patterns etched into its surface, glowing faintly in shades of blue and green. The entire structure appeared to be pulsating, emitting the same melodic signal they had tracked across the stars. This ... This is impossible, Nathaniel whispered, his voice barely audible as he stared at the object on the view screen. "What is it?" Lila murmured, her eyes wide with disbelief. "I don't know." "But it's not natural," Nathaniel replied, shaking his head. "This thing, it's older than anything we've ever discovered. This is beyond even the most ancient relics we've studied." Lila felt a chill crawl up her spine. The object was not just a mystery, it was a challenge. If it was a remnant of an ancient civilization, it was the kind of discovery that could change everything humanity knew about the universe. "Prepare an away team. We're going in," Lila commanded, her voice firm and resolute. The team gathered in the hangar, suited up in their exploration gear. Leela, Nathaniel, and 3 other crew members boarded a small shuttle designed for planetary or space station landings. As they took off from the Pioneer and approached the strange structure, the shuttle's systems hummed with anticipation. The closer they got, the more mesmerizing the object became. Its surface shimmered, reflecting starlight in strange, kaleidoscopic patterns. When they landed, the shuttle's landing gear made a soft thud against the surface. The structure was more immense than any of them had realized. Standing in the shadow of it, Lila felt the overwhelming weight of its mystery. There were no visible doors, no windows, nothing to indicate that it was meant to be explored. The structure seemed to pulse with energy, as though it was alive. "I don't like this," Lieutenant Carter muttered, looking around nervously. Lila didn't respond at first. She was too focused on the glowing patterns that lined the surface of the object. She felt an odd pull, as though the structure was calling to her. "It's all right," Lila said, trying to calm the nerves of her team. "We don't know what this is, but we're going to find out." The group moved cautiously toward the base of the structure. As they approached, Leela's eyes caught a faint glow in the center of the object. It seemed to form a doorway of sorts, glowing brighter as they neared it. Without a word, she stepped forward, her heart racing in anticipation. The moment she crossed the threshold, a wave of energy washed over her. The others followed, their expressions filled with confusion and awe. They stepped into a vast chamber inside the structure, where the walls pulsed with the same rhythmic light. It felt as if the very air was alive with sound, though nothing could be heard. "What is this place?" One of the crew members, Sergeant Emily Ruiz, asked in awe. Lila's eyes swept across the room. In the center stood a pedestal, and upon it was something that made her stomach lurch. It was a dark crystal, jagged and yet oddly beautiful. Its surface was etched with the same glowing symbols as the walls. Lila stepped closer to it, her hand reaching out instinctively. As soon as her fingers brushed against the crystal, the room seemed to react. The light flickered, and the soft musical signal they had heard earlier grew louder, echoing through the chamber. This is it. This is what's been calling us," Lila whispered, her voice filled with wonder. Suddenly the ground trembled beneath them. The hum of energy in the chamber grew louder, and the symbols on the walls shifted, rearranging themselves into new patterns. The air felt thick, charged with an unnatural energy. Lila stumbled backward, instinctively gripping the crystal as though it was the only thing anchoring her to reality. "What's happening?" Nathaniel asked, his voice tight with fear. "I don't know," Lila said, panic creeping into her voice. "We need to leave now." But before they could move, a powerful force surged from the pedestal. The light erupted, blinding them for a moment, and when it faded, the structure had changed. No longer just a hollow shell, the walls now shimmered with an otherworldly energy. And in the center of the room, there stood a figure. It was tall, its skin shimmering like liquid metal. Its eyes glowed with a soft, otherworldly light. Lila's breath caught in her throat. It was an alien, unlike any she had imagined. Its presence radiated power, but also a strange, almost mournful sadness. The figure spoke, its voice echoing in Lila's mind. "Welcome, travelers from the distant stars. You have awakened me from my long slumber." The room was still, almost suffocating, as Lila and her crew stood frozen before the alien figure. Its shimmering form towered above them, its eyes glowing like two stars in a distant galaxy. The energy in the air hummed, pulsating with a rhythm that matched the eerie melody they had heard from the Pioneer. But now, the sound was no longer distant. It was inside their heads, inside their hearts, speaking in a language that felt familiar but strange. Who are you?" Lila asked, her voice barely more than a whisper. She didn't know whether she was speaking to the figure or to herself. Trying to make sense of what was happening, the alien's eyes shimmered, as though considering her question. It raised one long, graceful arm, and with a movement so fluid it seemed unnatural. It gestured to the crystal in Lila's hand. "I am called Seraphel," the being spoke, its voice resonating directly in Lila's mind. Its tone neither soft nor harsh, but neutral, like a distant storm. "I have waited for millennia for someone to awaken me. And now, you are the ones who have answered." Lila felt a chill run down her spine. She wasn't sure whether it was the alien's presence or the weight of its words that caused the shiver. But there was something about this moment that felt too grand to fully understand. This was no ordinary discovery. This was an encounter with a being that had been slumbering for eons. And it had chosen them. "What do you want from us?" Nathaniel stepped forward, his hand on the blaster at his side. His voice was firm, though there was a trace of fear behind his words. No one could be prepared for something like this. Seraphel's eyes softened, or at least it seemed like they did. The figure tilted its head slightly, as though pondering the question before it responded. "I do not wish harm, human. I seek only understanding. The crystal you hold is not just an object, it is a key, a conduit between our worlds. You have awakened me, yes, but there is more at stake than you can imagine." Lila felt a growing sense of unease. The word key echoed in her mind. It reminded her of ancient myths, of puzzles and locks, of things that could either open doors or close them forever. And now she stood at the threshold, with the power to open whatever was hidden within the ancient structure. "What do you mean?" Lila asked. "What is at stake?" Serafel's eyes seemed to deepen, glowing brighter for a brief moment. It was almost as though it was looking into her very soul, searching for something beyond the surface. "The balance of the galaxy," Serafel said, its voice heavy with meaning. "When I was sealed away, it was to protect the galaxy from destruction. But now, the balance is tipping. The ancient enemies I fought, the ones who sought to unravel the fabric of existence, have returned. And only by unlocking the full power of this structure can we prevent another war. A war that could consume all life, not just yours, but every living being across the stars." The gravity of the situation hit Leela like a punch to the gut. They were standing on the brink of something enormous, something far bigger than they had ever imagined. The crystal, the structure, Serafel, all of it, was part of a much larger puzzle. One that had been set in motion long before humanity even learned how to reach the stars. "We didn't sign up for this," Sergeant Emily Ruiz said, her voice shaking. "We're just explorers. What do we know about saving the galaxy?" Lila turned to Emily, her face tight with resolve. "We may not have signed up for this, but we're here, and we have to see this through." Serafel nodded, as though it understood the doubts and fears the humans faced. "You are not alone in this," it said. "I will help you, guide you. But you must trust the power of the crystal. Trust the connection it offers." The room seemed to grow colder as Serafel spoke, as though the very air around them was shifting. Leela could feel it, the strange energy, the hum in her veins, the call to something greater. She had always been drawn to the stars, but now standing here, she understood that her journey was no longer just about exploration. It was about survival of everything, everywhere. "Do you trust me, Captain?" Nathaniel's voice cut through the silence. Leela turned to face him. His eyes were filled with uncertainty, but there was something else there. To a quiet determination. "I have no choice," Lila replied. "None of us do." Serafel raised its arm again, this time pointing toward the pedestal. A low hum filled the chamber as the crystal in Leela's hand began to pulse with energy. It glowed brighter, and the symbols on the walls shifted again, rearranging themselves in new patterns. Lila held her breath as the crystal began to glow with an intensity that was almost blinding. "Place it on the pedestal," Serafel instructed. "Only then will you unlock its true power." Lila hesitated for a moment, the weight of the moment heavy on her shoulders, but then, with a steady hand, she walked forward. The pedestal seemed to welcome the crystal, its surface shifting to accommodate the glowing stone. As soon as the crystal touched the pedestal, a wave of energy surged through the room, sending a shockwave of light and sound crashing against their bodies. Lila staggered backward, her heart racing as the energy coursed through her. It was overwhelming, like standing in the eye of a storm that was both beautiful and terrifying. The walls of the structure shimmered, and the symbols on them began to glow with an almost blinding light. Then it stopped. The room fell into an eerie silence, and for a moment Lila wondered if they had failed. But as she looked around, she realized that the structure had changed. It was no longer just a dormant relic, it had come alive. The walls seemed to pulse with life, and the air itself was charged with energy. Serafel stepped forward, its figure now fully illuminated by the light. "The first step is complete," it said, "but the true trial has yet to begin." Lila nodded, her mind racing with questions. What had they just unlocked? What was this trial Serafel spoke of? And what had they really awakened? As if in response to her thoughts, Serafel continued, its voice steady and solemn. "The trial will test you, your strength, your will, and your unity. For the balance of the galaxy is fragile. It's only those who prove themselves worthy can wield the power that you have unlocked." Leela felt a knot form in her stomach. The galaxy. She had been prepared to explore the unknown, but this was something else entirely. Before she could speak, the ground beneath their feet trembled once more. A deep rumble shook the chamber, and the light from the pedestal flickered. Something was coming. Something ancient, something powerful. And Lila knew in that moment that their journey had only just begun. "We need to move," she ordered, her voice sharp. Get to the shuttle now." But as they turned to leave, the structure groaned, and a new figure emerged from the shadows, its silhouette outlined by the flickering light. A new enemy? Or a dark force from the past? Lila's heart raced. Whatever it was, they would face it together. The chamber trembled again, the ground vibrating underfoot, as though the very structure itself was waking from a long slumber. Lila's heart pounded in her chest, each beat echoing in her ears. The room was filled with an ominous energy, and the air seemed to thrum with an unnatural force. The mysterious figure, its outline still barely visible in the dim light, moved forward, its presence imposing yet calm. Lila gripped her weapon tighter, though she had no intention of using it unless necessary. Whatever this was, it was far beyond anything she or her crew had trained for. It wasn't just an alien or an ancient being, it was something ancient. Something that had been waiting for this moment for millennia. The figure stepped into the light, revealing its form. It was like nothing Lila had ever seen, a creature made of shadows and light, its features shifting and changing with each movement. Its eyes, if they could even be called eyes, were dark pools of endless depth, swirling with an energy that felt both inviting and terrifying. A low hum filled the air as it spoke, its voice like a whisper on the wind. Both inside and outside of Lila's mind. "You have unlocked the key," the figure said, its tone both melodic and grave. "But you have not yet proven yourself. The trial is upon you. Only the worthy may pass." Lila took a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves. She turned to her crew, meeting each of their gazes. They were all in this together, and no matter what came next, they had to face it as one. "What kind of trial?" Nathaniel asked, his voice tight. But there was a flicker of determination in his eyes. "The trial of unity and strength," the figure responded. "You will face the challenges of your mind, your will, and your very souls. Those who are found lacking will not survive. But if you pass, you will be granted the power to protect the galaxy." Lila's throat went dry. The power to protect the galaxy. It sounded impossible. She wasn't sure whether to feel hopeful or terrified. But she knew one thing. They had no choice but to face whatever came next. The figure raised a long, graceful arm, and the walls of the chamber began to shift. The patterns on the walls dissolved, replaced by a swirling vortex of light and shadow. The air crackled with energy, and the floor beneath them seemed to dissolve into a swirling mist. "Step forward," the figure commanded. "The first trial begins now." Lila exchanged a glance with Nathaniel, who nodded. Without a word, they stepped forward into the swirling vortex, followed by the rest of the crew. The air grew thick, and a strange pressure weighed down on them, like they were being pulled into the very heart of the structure. The world around them twisted and distorted. Lila felt as though she were falling, tumbling through time and space. Then, just as suddenly, everything stopped. She found herself standing on solid ground again. But this was no longer the chamber they had entered. The landscape was barren and desolate. The sky above them was a swirling mass of dark clouds, and the ground was cracked and dry, with jagged rocks jutting out like broken bones. In the distance, Lila saw a figure, another version of herself, standing motionless, facing away from her. "Is this another test?" Nathaniel asked, his voice tense, but his hand resting lightly on the hilt of his weapon. Lila didn't respond. Her eyes were locked on the figure of herself in the distance. It looked wrong. It was her, but it wasn't. The longer she stared at it, the more she realized that the figure was not just an illusion, it was a part of her. An echo of her own fears and doubts. "This is the trial of the mind." Seraphel's voice echoed around them. "You must face yourselves. Conquer the shadows within, or be lost to them forever." Lila took a step forward, her boots crunching against the dry ground. As she approached the figure of herself, she felt a wave of unease wash over her. Her heartbeat quickened, and the figure turned slowly to face her. The expression on her own face was one of anger, distrust, and something else, something darker. "Do you think you're ready for this?" The shadow version of Lila asked, its voice a twisted mockery of her own. "You're not a leader. You're just a pawn in a game much bigger than you." You can't protect anyone. You never could. Lila's breath hitched, but she didn't falter. She had heard these doubts before. From others. From herself. It was true she had never been sure of her ability to lead. There were so many times she had questioned her decisions, her choices. But here, in this place, she realized that she had to face those fears head on. You're wrong, she said, her voice firm. I am a leader. I've led this crew across the stars, and I will lead us through this trial. The shadow Leela smirked. You think you can defeat me with words? You can't even defeat your own fears. With a sudden movement, the shadow Leela lunged at her. Lila's instincts kicked in, and she ducked, narrowly avoiding the grasping hands. She backed away, but the shadow was relentless, its twisted form moving faster than Lila could react. For a moment, Lila felt the familiar sense of fear, the same panic that had always gripped her when things seemed out of control. But then something shifted inside her. She was no longer just reacting to the fear. She was controlling it. She understood it. She knew that she was more than her doubts, more than the fears that had once held her back. With a sudden surge of confidence, Lila reached out and grabbed the shadow version of herself by the shoulders, forcing it to meet her eyes. The creature struggled, but Lila's grip tightened. You are a part of me, Lila said, her voice steady now. But you do not control me, the shadow screamed, its form flickering and dissolving like smoke in the wind. Lila let go, and as the shadow vanished, the barren landscape began to shift. The ground beneath her feet cracked and crumbled, and the swirling clouds above parted to reveal a bright, clear sky. The trial of the mind had been passed. The ground trembled once again, and the swirling vortex of light reappeared around them. The crew found themselves back in the chamber, standing before the alien figure once more. Seraphel watched them with silent intensity. You have proven yourselves in the trial of the mind, Seraphel said. But the true trial still awaits. The trial of will. The vortex swirled again, and before Leela could react, the world shifted once more. This time, she found herself standing alone in a vast, endless void. The stars around her blinked like tiny pinpricks of light, and the silence was absolute. You must choose, Seraphel's voice echoed. Will you fight for the galaxy, for your world, or will you turn away from your destiny? Lila looked around, unsure of what to do. The weight of the universe seemed to press down on her, and for a brief moment, doubt crept back into her heart. She had already faced her fears, but now she had to choose. It was her decision alone. I choose to fight, Lila said, her voice strong. For Earth, for the galaxy. For my crew? In that moment, the stars around her began to brighten, the void filled with the sound of the universe coming alive. The energy of the galaxy itself seemed to pour into her, and she felt the power of the ancient structure surge through her. Her hands glowed with the light of the cosmos, and she knew, without a doubt, that she had passed the final trial. The void faded, and Lila stood once more before Seraphel. The alien figure was silent for a moment, then nodded, a gesture that felt like approval. You are worthy, Captain Lila Brooks, Seraphel said. You and your crew have passed the trials. The galaxy is in your hands now. Protect it. The room shimmered, and the crew of the Pioneer was returned to the chamber. The ancient structure around them pulsed with a new energy, and for the first time, Lila felt a sense of peace. They had faced the trials together, and now they were ready. The galaxy awaited them, and they would be its guardians.